Throughout the ages, Shanghai has been known as a center of industry, commerce, and tourism in China. Today, it is home to 17 million people and is considered to be one of the most prosperous cosmopolitan cities in the world. Shanghai recently won the World Expo bid, and the entire city is preparing to host the momentous event in 2010. Shanghai began as a sleepy fishing village, but in the 13th century, it developed into a prosperous harbor city. After the end of the Opium War in 1840, Shanghai was forced to open one of 5 major ports for foreign trade in China. During that time, Shanghai also became the biggest spiritual port, drawing in different denominations from all around the world. Beginning in 1843, Christian missionaries began building large churches in Shanghai. One of these historic churches is Moore Memorial Church.
This magnificent Gothic building stands in the central part of Shanghai and silently testifies to the eventful history of China. The commitment, service, and sacrifice of Christians like these became the essence of their praise to God.
Pastor Shi Qi-gui was born in Shanghai. He was a senior pastor at Moore Memorial Church for 10 years. Since his retirement in 1998, Pastor Shi has frequently been invited to preach at the church. As a musician, he also loves to lead the congregation in singing praises to God.
The beautiful music reminded the congregation of the rich history of this incredible church. The original building was called the Trinity Church and was established in 1874 by Reverend Lambuth, a missionary from the United States. In the year 1900, William Burke became the pastor, and later that year, he was providentially introduced to the Moore family in Kansas City.
摩尔的这家族里面有一个女孩子
This Moore family, whose daughter just passed away, donated a sum of money to Pastor Brooke for the building of a church in Far East in memorial to their daughter.
As a result, the Trinity Church was rebuilt and was later renamed Moore Memorial Church.
After the renovation, Moore Memorial Church experienced rapid growth. By the 1920s, there were 1,200 active members. The only way to accommodate the growing congregation was to expand to a larger facility. In 1929, a well-known architect from the Czech Republic, Mr. Hudek, created a new design. The new building was completed in 1931 and became the most celebrated church in China. Moore Memorial Church intentionally developed a variety of community activities. During the 1930s, Moore Memorial Church was known as the church that makes the greatest social impact in Asia.
Sadly, after 1935, the Japanese invasion forced the church into several years of total inactivity. During that time, the church building was used as a storage facility and as a horse stable for Japanese soldiers. Surviving church members still remember this painful experience. Professor O. Tim Woon recalled that the hymn "Nearer My God to Thee" played in the church on the very day that the Japanese soldiers arrived.
I thought that was the last time in the church. So I bravely tried to play the organ for the last time. I just thought I tried to play the music. That's all. I had no time to think of why I do it, why I choose that hymn. No, it's just all of a sudden I did it. So I switched on the organ and started to play the hymn, Nearer, My God, to Thee, with tears in my eyes, until the phrase, still all my songs shall be, and that I played full organ.
After the establishment of the new Chinese government in 1949, foreign missionaries gradually left China. By the grace of God, Chinese Christians continued the task of administration of church activities under the 3 self principle. Self-governing, self-supporting, and self-propagating became the guiding principle of churches in China. That same year, Professor Ma Ge-shun returned to China from the Southwestern Baptist Seminary School of Sacred Music in America. He became one of the most celebrated conductors of his day, and as a dedicated Christian, conducted the choir of the Moore Memorial Church. His musical talent brought the singing of God's praises to a glorious new height.
解放以后第一个圣诞节
The first Christmas after I went back to China, I conducted the combined choir for the singing of the Messiah at the Moore's Memorial Church. The musical talents of the choir members were excellent. They read all the notes fast, sang well in English, and harmonized perfectly as a large choir.
Moore Memorial Church became the hub of all combined church activities in the Huangpu district. Since Moore was a foreign name, the title was changed to the Chinese name Muan, which means abundant grace, a congregation bathing in God's grace.
1958年9月份
In September 1958, the churches in Shanghai started a new policy of combined worship, since denominationalism was not a problem among Chinese Christians. Therefore, bringing together various denominational churches for combined worship turned out to be a blessing. People appreciate such fellowship in unity. For some Christians, there's no need to go for a long distance to find a good place for worship on Sundays. To the seniors, it was a real blessing.
During the Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1976, the entire nation was in turmoil. All religious activities were affected. Mu'en Church was not excluded, and all worship services came to a halt. The entire church facility was used by a local middle school. Church pastors and Christian workers all over China were forced to provide hard labor in factories and farming areas across the countryside. Pastor Shi was forced to work in a factory. The future of preaching in China looked bleak.
我有个老同学，高中毕业的老同学。
A high school classmate encouraged me to never give up. He said, "This kind of hardship won't last long. The church will need people like you to carry on the word of the Lord." After he left, I began to pray. "Oh God, I am terribly discouraged. Please revitalize my faith in you so that I can have the chance to serve you again in the future."
The Cultural Revolution ended in 1976. The new society in China became more open, and religious freedom at last returned to the people. At the same time, Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping was released from a forced labor camp and became involved in new politics. In 1979, President Jimmy Carter invited Deng Xiaoping to visit the United States. At a recent meeting with Reverend Qiao in Atlanta, President Carter recalled the historic meeting.
He said that he would guarantee me that the laws and Constitution of China would be changed to permit freedom of worship, and that Bibles would be permitted. Because I was so glad when he agreed to let the Bibles come back.
Under the new open policy in China, many churches were reopened and began worship services again. On September 2, 1979, Mu-En Church in Shanghai resumed its Sunday worship service. Since the church had been closed for so long, no one could imagine who would come when the doors opened. Pastor Shi went to the church at 2 a.m.
到3点多钟我就听见
I recall that around 3 a.m., people began to come.
到6点
And at 6 a.m., the church was opened for worship, and many people rushed into the sanctuary, some weeping with joy. I was so deeply touched by the crowd. Some continued to sing, others in prayers, and still others weeping. The sanctuary was packed with hundreds of worshippers.
During the 1980s, Shanghai came alive again. China's open policy made China more accessible to the world, and foreign visitors coming by the thousands landed in Shanghai.
In 1988, American evangelist Billy Graham visited China with his wife Ruth and son Franklin. The Grahams made a special trip to Ruth's birthplace and visited the old clinic where her father, Dr. Bell, served as a physician for many years. On April 23rd, Billy Graham preached from the pulpit of the Mu-En Church.
Now I want to say one other thing. If you have a doubt in your heart that you have ever received Christ into your heart, make that commitment today. That is my prayer for you as I leave. My wife and my son who's with me and others with me have a heart full of love for you. God bless you all.
As the religious policy of China became more open, the gospel ministry of the church in China expanded freely. In 1989, because of the love and support from Christian believers in Shanghai, the bell tower of Mu-En Church was reconstructed. The bells rang in Shanghai again, telling the world that church activities had resumed with new vitality.
Since the reopening of Mu-En Church, the pastors and members of the church have passionately focused on the spiritual growth of all believers. They began worship and discipleship training 5 days a week. These classes were designed to help people understand more about the Bible and to lead them to become better servants of God. Of course, the main activity at the church was Sunday worship. There were 5 worship services throughout the day, with an average of 5,000 people in attendance. Communion was held on the first Sunday of every month. To date, over 10,000 people have been baptized.
At Mu-En Church, there are traditional worship, Saturday worship, and special worship services in the Swatao dialect. The church has not neglected the cultural tradition in China. On the 9th day of the 9th lunar month, a special worship is always held to honor the elderly. The congregation uses various styles and creative methods to express their worship and praises to a loving God. The spiritual, God-centered worship at Mu'en Church has made a great impact on society. Professor Li of Shanghai University commented on this influence.
现在基督教是一个黄金的发展时期，那么处在一个最好阶段。那么这
This
个
is a
阶段
new golden age for the growth and expansion of the church in China. We have gone through several processes. The end of the Cultural Revolution introduced a recovery process, then led into a reconstruction process. Now, it should be entering a rejuvenation process. Regardless whether you are a believer or not, Christianity in China has become an indigenized religion without any foreign labeling. I think this is a real success.
Today, many young leaders in China are serving the Lord in a variety of Christian churches. Preacher Cai Tong Li of Mu'en Church is one good example. He gave up his high-paying job as chef and answered God's call to ministry. After spending 4 years at East China Theological Seminary, he was properly equipped to serve the Lord.
After I entered the seminary for training, I have discovered that it was a journey of faith and with many blessings. I encountered many hardships and much joy. One thing is very clear to me: God is leading on.
Mu'en Church has a variety of fellowship meetings and activities for young people. These activities are designed to encourage spiritual growth and to prepare teens to live a productive life as part of the body of Christ. In addition, many young couples select the beautiful setting of Mu'en Church for their wedding ceremonies. Some wedding guests have been so profoundly touched by God's presence that they have accepted the Lord during wedding celebrations.
The disciples at Mu'en Church are not only praising and worshiping God inside the church building. The most exciting part of congregational life is a great opportunity for dynamic service. The church and the community are working together to create a better society for all. Elder Fu Shenwei is a strong and committed lay leader. He tells a secret of how to make social work like this successful.
Social services is one of the most important and visible work our church can perform in order to establish a positive image in our community. Through these practical services, we can also assist the people to improve their Christian faith.
Singing praises to the Lord has always been a part of worship for the church in China, both in times of peace and persecution. But after the Cultural Revolution, Christians in China found it difficult to obtain Chinese hymnals. Recognizing this need, the China Christian Council formed a committee, along with Pastor Shi and Reverend Xiao, to recollect, edit, organize, and republish new Chinese hymns for Christian believers all throughout China.
So we have 4 colleagues, 2 pastors and 2 ladies. We work together. We think we should preserve the treasures of church music. Actually, we find it's more important. We should have our Chinese hymns, as we are Chinese Christians. So we try to gather some new works from Chinese Christians. And we got more than 1,000 manuscripts. We were so encouraged. And the authors and from some pastors, some intellectual Christians, and also some very ordinary church people, peasants and workers. And we try our best to select some of them to be put in the hymn book. So now in our hymn book there are altogether 400 hymns, but 102 are we call the Chinese hymns. That means either the lyrics or the melody written by Chinese Christians, or even some adaptation of Chinese folk music.
The praise music at Mu'en Church has become especially influential. Since 1979, the church has developed several choirs: Sunday worship choir, youth choir, senior choir, and Sunday afternoon choir. Members of the choirs rehearse for hours on weekends. While worshiping together, singers and musicians encourage one another, pray together, and enjoy the fellowship of Christian community.
Thanks be to God, the Mu'en Church is not the only church in Shanghai that is praising God. The headquarters of China Christian Council and Three Self-Patriotic Movement are located in Shanghai, not far from Mu'en Church. For the last 20 years, Christian leaders have placed strong emphasis on church planting and rebuilding. More than 200 churches have been rebuilt or newly built in this cosmopolitan city. It is truly an unparalleled architectural and spiritual witness in history.
Let's return to the historic Mu'en Church, the Church of Abundant Grace. The grand church building has been standing in the center of Shanghai for over 100 years. Now, together with the people of Shanghai, the church has become a symphony of praise. Shanghai Praise is more than words and music. Praise is clearly represented in the actions and lives of thousands of Chinese Christians. The people of the church will continue to be a bright witness for Jesus Christ for years to come. And Shanghai Praise will continue. A praise of dynamic faith, a praise of eternal hope, and a praise of agape love.